the 15th date is the last date upon which you should be making those payments. Failure to meet those payments at that time means that you have penalties and interest to be charged. For those of you who are sole traders, you're not paying PAYE, but you should be paying your health surcharge. The health surcharge payment is $107.25 per quarter, $429 per year. The quarterly dates, remember, would be for the health surcharge. You can pay that. You as a sole trader can pay it on a quarterly basis. With regard to the payments of Green Fund Levy and Business Levy, that is March, June, September, December, the last date of the month. You're paying the Green Fund Levy and, of course, the Business Levy. Income tax quarterly basis will become applicable when you enter that payment arrangement. So you have the dates that you must remember as business people. If you're employing anybody, you have people employed with you, you ought to be making those payments by the 15th of the following month. Whatever deductions you take for national insurance, for PAYE and health surcharge, you should be paying by the 15th of the following month. With regard to your own payments as sole traders for Green Fund Levy and Business Levy, March, June, September, December, the last day of the month, that's supposed to be paid to the Board of Inland Revenue. And the last piece here that I want to go through with you are the documents that you will want to give either to your accountant or even you yourself putting it together to get your financial statements. The documents required to produce monthly financial statements. You want the bank statements, whatever process checks the bank's process. You want the deposit slips. Let me just talk about deposit slips with your bankers for me, please. Many of you collect money, go to the bank and deposit it. You might have collected it in cash or you might collect it by a check. And you're writing up the deposit slip, but you put the amount of money, you put the check number, you put a date, you sign it, and you give it to the bank. That doesn't help your accountant. It doesn't help the person who's doing your work for you. You need to put in the customer name on that, so we know who the customer is and we can track it back to the invoice that you have issued. That is the way we tie it back. If you have multiple deposits to make, then at the back of the voucher, list the persons for whom the money has been collected so you can track it back to your invoices. You want debit vouchers and credit voucher memos from the bank. You want the check payment vouchers. Now, I will talk to you about check payment vouchers in a minute. It is a requirement of the Board of Inland Revenue that you must have a voucher attached to your bill, along with whatever payment mode that you use, be the check or the whatever attached to your bill. So the check payment vouchers, you write vouchers that you can buy at any stationery shop, or you can create your own vouchers for checks and for cash. Cash vouchers represent any cash transaction with supporting bills. So when you do have a bill and you paid cash for it, you need to put a voucher attached to it for your internal record purposes. Invoices that you have issued and the credit notes issued to cancel any invoices issued. And of course, the PAYE, health surcharge, and national insurance receipts that you have made. With regard to invoices issued, many of you, because of the kind of business that you're in, I come to get some clothes made. I talk to you, I dash you the $5 or $6 or $7 or $8 or the $900 or whatever it is. You collect it, you smile, and they walk away, and everybody's happy. You ought to be giving them some kind of invoice for that. So it's a record of it, and you keep a copy of that invoice. Failing which, when they leave, you open your notebook and you do the sales daybook record that we indicated to you before, where you have your date, the customer name, and the amount of money received, so that you have a record on a daily basis as to the money that you have received from your various customers. Are we good with that? Yeah? So as a point of recap, therefore, just quickly now, because this is how we classify expenditure. No matter what kind of business that you're in, you only concern yourself with VAT registration when your turnover in a 12-month period is more than $500,000. We are concerned about all expenses claimed must be supported by documentation. Expenses that relate to private use must not be included in the business. Here are the expenses that we want to include. and we categorize them accordingly. Suppliers, telephone expenses, utility bills, electricity, where the bills are not in your business name, then I can only claim 2/3 of that bill. In addition to cell phones, once the cell phone is in my business name, I could get the full amount, or if it is not in my business name, then I can only claim 2/3. With regard to motor vehicle expenses, all operating expenses of the motor vehicle, printing, postage, and stationery, business travel, and salaries, subscription and membership dues, insurance payments, client entertainment, your pension plans expenses, accounting and audit fees, interest and banking charges, advertising. So the dates to remember: the 15th of the month, and the quarter days: March 31st, June 30th, September 30th, December 31st. Quarter days to remember that payments must be made, and the documents that we required to maintain your accounting system. I want to make a point that I want you to be very clear about. If you do not keep these records in order, and some of you put it in an envelope or put it in a box or have it all over the place, when the time comes to do the work in presenting your financial statements, you will go to the accountant and say, well, I want my work to be done now, please. And you walk to him with a box, or you walk to him with a bunch of envelopes that you didn't open, or you have everything in an envelope. That is where it will cost you money. Go to a stationery shop, buy what is called an Excel file, buy your cash vouchers. We'll talk about vouchers in a minute. Staple them onto your bills and file them in month order for me, please. That way, you present one binder. This is my year's work. It is easier to manage, and your cost will be reduced because the time it takes to do your work will be reduced. Okay. Let's then get back to where we were. So we have our business expenses. The next thing that we want to concern ourselves with, so what we did before, we looked at all those business expenses. So remember what I'm saying to you then. What we put at the top here, the PDB is the purchases they book. All those expenses I showed you on that listing that we had just now, I can have columns for all of them. Or I can have a column for other, and whatever I do here, I need to further analyze. And therefore, what I'm doing, I'm categorizing and putting in order. As far as the slides are concerned, yes, I have forwarded slides to Creative TT, and they will, of course, get them to you all when it's all this is all done. Along with some of the handouts the paperwork that I'm doing there, everything that I will do it with you today can be sent to you via email, so that you have the information to review when you need to. And of course, you have my number and my email address if you have any further questions. All right, so here's where we go. Let's talk a little bit about stock now, because for many of you, and I learned this recently, once we got a call to say make masks, people had cloth all over the place, but that cloth has value. And some people have their supplies. You need to maintain some kind of stock sheet with regard to the stock of cloth that you have, with some kind of description. Why is it important? The items of stock on hand must be prepared at the end of every financial year. The item of stock that you have on hand must be prepared at the end of every financial year. The stock on hand must be valued, because for many of you, you have a lot of bolter cloth, a piece cut here, a piece cut there, but when you measure that out at the end of a year, it has a value. That value assists with your profitability, because when you purchased that item, it was an expense, but you have not utilized all of it. And therefore, there's an adjustment that the accountants will make to recognize the expenditure as opposed to what you have in stock. The stock sheet tells them, based on what I have purchased, I still have this stock left, and therefore they will minus accordingly to give you a better profit position. All right? Yes, have a collection. I like how you call it. I like how you call it. The issue is important though, because two things also happen. Why am I keeping that stock report? At the end of the year, I will check to make sure that things are not becoming wasted or rotten on me. I'll check to make sure that I have good value with these things. All right. So once you do that, the stock therefore is an important thing to have. When oh I have on this. Ooh. All right. Sorry about that. Back to where we have the debtors ledger. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the debtors ledger again, because the debtors ledger is absolutely important for you to maintain, to understand who you owe and those who will owe you. For many of you, you might be selling on a balance parcel basis. You might be selling on some credit terms that you want to be able to record and know these things. And therefore, for the individuals that you have on credit, it is important that you keep some kind of system to account for what they have taken, what they have paid, and what balance is owed to you. Some people go along with this quite nicely, and then when there's an issue, I don't really owe you this much. How you treat with the work that you do, the question put forward is down payments for customized items. Exactly. If you have customized items and you're taking a down payment, my advice to you all would simply be this. You can go to a stationery shop and buy what is called index cards. Some of them come in about 4 inches by 3 inches or slightly bigger than that. And you have basic information about the customer, the name, address, the contact information, email address. You can take a date of birth because you want to be nice and friendly with them. But the important thing that you will have on that will be whatever customized information and measurements that you have, and perhaps at the back of the card, though, you'll want to know when you receive the invoice, how much the cost of the job is supposed to be, how much has been paid down on the job, what date it was paid, because bet your bottom dollar, as night follows day, some query by somebody will come that I paid you more than that, but you don't remember. The evidence must be there to show, and you have it on record in a simple way. If you don't have the record, you can't prove anything. If you have the record in an orderly manner, it takes you just a few minutes to pick up your card. Okay, it was paid on that date. This was the invoice. This is the balance. This is the date they paid me the last time. I have the information in an up-to-date manner. You're going to see this on the slide sent to you. You can use the format where you know the customer, who it is, what was bought, when the account was opened, what invoices were received, what is the debit note amount, what is the credit amount, what's the balance owed. If you record it in a notebook, the challenge with using a notebook, and the question here is, I normally record it in a notebook and give the customer a receipt. Nothing is wrong with giving the customer the receipt, but here's what you might need to do. If you have a receipt book and you write the receipt and give it to the customer, then somewhere you must have a sales book that records the sales for the day and the collections that you have received with regard to credit items. That is part of your sales too. So once you issue the sale, and part of it is on credit, then you take up the total sale amount and put it into a sales book, but that amount is not fully collected as yet. But that is part of your total sales. So you want to know what is your total sale at the time it was made, but you know you have something to collect over a period of time. The credits that you collect over a period of time when you issue the receipts for, that will be accounted for separately with regard to the sales ledger. In the sales day book, you'll identify when people pay you, and you'll account for them properly in that manner. So you have two things to do. Give the receipt, yes. Raise an invoice for the total cost of the work. Give them the invoice. We have that recorded in your sales day book, and you can go against that invoice and write as much as they pay and how many installments you have given to them. When they pay it, you do that, and that will be perfect, perfectly done. And therefore, at any point in time, you could take up your cards, or you could look into your notebook and say, okay, I have 10 persons owe me $30,000. and you know where that $30,000 is, and you could prove that they owe you that money. And that's the most important thing to do, because if you have a query, you can lose in that query if you don't have the right evidence to show. Now, we were talking before, so we dealt with the issue of debtors and creditors. We dealt with the issue of expenses. We dealt with the issue of your sales day book and recording sales and recording your purchase in your purchase day book. The one that surprises most people is this thing called your asset register. Asset register is whereby you keep a register of the assets that you own. What about your sewing machine? What about your computer? What about your tablet? What about those small tools that you have, the power tools that you're using? Those things need to be recorded. And I'll tell you why as you go. One way of recording it is, again, I have the index cards. I can get the index cards in a stationery shop. I identify the date I purchased it. What did I purchase? Some description of it, some serial number it might have, some value that I purchased it at. I own this thing. It has value from the point of view for a number of reasons. It has value because I know the assets I own, and if anything happens, I can go to this and determine if I had this is the serial number. But here's what most of us fail to do. I can have all these records, and I have them at home, in a box, in a corner, nice and put away. And then something happens to the house and the box that I have it put into. And then all of a sudden, the effort of putting it in that box, you lose because it can be destroyed by fire. For some of the records that you all are keeping and have, there should be a backup source somewhere else. So if I have these cards, why don't I photocopy them, put them in an envelope, and leave them by some brother or sister's house that is not the house that I'm in for safekeeping? If anything happens in the house that I'm in, I don't lose that information. And hence the reason to I go back to the issue of accounting system, an accounting record. All right, you will have the accounting system, accounting record. If you do it in the cloud, then you could be anywhere in the world. You can tap into your system. The cloud the provider does all the storage and maintenance for you. You have all the records in the cloud. You are good and secured. You're anywhere you need it. But if you have your books and accounting records, then it is quite important that after a year or as you go along, that you summarize some of these things and you file them away at home, but you file them in another source so that if anything happens, the important records you can keep. Some of us might be so disposed, you can have a fireproof cabinet, a bit expensive, but you have a fire secured position. Or you can go to PriceSmart and buy these safes, and whatever the important documents are, you put it into a safe and secure it. The questions that we have, the value of those things depreciate, and if so, will have to be updated. The value of those things, yes, can depreciate, because from an accounting point of view, we will create the depreciation and use it for accounting calculations. The card, though, here gives the cost and the description. I can keep the depreciation charge to the back of it and do the calculations of the depreciation to the back of the card. Not a problem. At some point in time, when it is sold, then the card will disappear. But if it is that you want to revalue the asset or change the asset around, if you want to revalue, the card is also important, and the revaluation date can go in as to what date you do some revaluation of it. The important thing, though, is that we have a record to show the assets that we own. Now, why do I want to know the assets? Simply because in the financial statements, there are two statements. In fact, there are four statements. There's a balance sheet and statement, what we call a statement of financial position. There's an income statement. There's a statement of the cash flows. And of course, there's the equity statement. For the balance sheet statement or statement of financial position, we want to know what assets we own that must be supported by some asset register. This is the register that will support that data. Remember what we said before. The financier, the investor, the people looking at your financial statements wants to validate and verify and understand what you have. And therefore, they could ask you, can I see your register, please? It must tie back to the financial statement information that you're providing. And therefore, yes, you can value these things over time. For example, for those of you who, I have a car or I had my sewing machine 10 years ago, and I am not registered in business, then you simply take the information that you have with regard to the asset register, the description, and then you put what value you gift it at, let's say, current day pricing. and then you put that into the business at the current day pricing, right? And you can then take it from that point of view. From point forward, when it's in the business now, I now keep a record of it. So the question put up to me is, so what about those of us who own assets for years? Well, then that's part of it. I never kept records of the date of purchase and how much you actually paid for it, and how do you know now reconcile this with, okay, so what you do, I bought my computer about 5, 6, 7 years ago. I have my sewing machine for so long. When did I get business registration? I got business registration last year. Or I got business registration the year before, and I now want to try and put together the financials. The accountant will say to you, tell me what assets you have. Tell me what assets you have. Go and create an asset register. What is an asset register? I have motor vehicles. I want some description of the motor vehicle, the cost, what I think the cost is. By the way, I have furniture. I have equipment. You now need to put this down in a register, and then you, as the owner of the business, can say to the business in a reasonable way, of course, that this is the value I put to this based on this is what I purchased it for, or what if I recall, or this is what the market value of it is today, and I'm not putting it into the business. It's in a good condition. This is the value I will use to represent the asset. And from point forward, then the financial statement will take that cost and apply depreciation to it going forward over the years, useful life of the asset. So the question is, what happens if you own the asset for years before and you now want to put it into the business? The answer is simply create the register. You have motor vehicles as one item of asset register. You have office equipment. You have computer equipment. You have other types of equipment. You can then put this all together in a list with a description, with some serial number, and then you put a value to what you think it is based on your current prices. Once you have that, you can now put that into your financial statements and get it done. Thank you. Thank you very much. Here's where it gets more interesting, because you need to keep bank records. We said that banking records are important. So you want to maintain a file that contains your bank statements and your used checks, leaves that you have. You want to maintain a file with your bank statements and used check leaves. The best way to do this, please do not use the manila files for me, please. Do not use the manila files. The manila files are soft, the ends get damaged, and eventually paper in the files get damaged. You buy what is called an IXL file, or you buy those file folders that have a rigid or solid exterior, so that it helps protect the documents on the inside. Your bank statements need to be filed along with the canceled checks. The debit advices, where the bank does its own internal transfers into your account. They provide you copies of those transactions. You need to keep those filed too, along with your bank statements. On a monthly basis, when you get your bank statements, please reconcile your bank statements on a monthly basis. The bank sometimes appear not to be human, but they do make mistakes. So you need to be checking to make sure that you understand what the bank has done with your account and what money transactions move through your account. The bank has been known now to request from you all your status of tax when you're applying for loans, or if you have an overdraft facility, when they are reviewing the overdraft facility. Let me spend a little time with this, because we need to understand how the market and the environment there is changing. I said to you earlier today that the banks and the people that we go to who have an interest in your business will want to see that you manage your professional business in a professional manner. But at the same time, they have information about your business that you don't know. What they don't have is whether or not you are paying your taxes on time, and whether or not you have any liabilities to the tax man. The banks today, because of many new regulations out there will be asking you to provide what is called a tax clearance certificate. I know it's very clear. Some of us, if we're going on, we don't want anything right now, and we're happy with what we are doing. And then all of a sudden we get up one day, you know something, I need to get a sewing machine, I have to increase the volume of what I'm doing. I need to go to the bank. And we're now scrambling to get all the documents and put things together. It is better we have these things properly done on an ongoing basis so that we do not find ourselves in a problem going down the road. Banks today ask for the tax clearance certificate because the banks are at risk if you owe the taxman. The taxman gets paid before the bank. If you owe taxes, the taxman will get paid before the bank. So the bank wants to know that you don't owe the taxman, and you have to go and apply for a tax clearance or income tax clearance certificate. And that they'll give you a certificate saying that you have no taxes, and the bank will now be satisfied. Particularly when you all are going for a loan application. For whatever reason your business requires a loan, they will need to see that your tax status is in order. Please get to the stationery shop, buy a rigid, what we call the IXL files, or some rigid file, so that you can maintain your paper records in order. File them on a monthly basis, so the bank statements must be filed on a monthly basis. Against all the vouchers, you have check payment vouchers and cash payment vouchers. We'll talk about that in a minute. You put your cancel checks, you put the bills, and you file the bills in month order. Separate cash bills from check payment bills. So that's two sections. The next section is the bank statement section, and the next section will be your invoice records. That, in essence, is your record keeping structure. It makes it easy for the accountants to figure out what you have done and how you are doing it. Let me again just move along to something else. As we are in this particular section, let me deal with the issues with regard to banks. And I will do banks and taxes. Let's do taxes and banks. This also, I think, has been sent to you all. For those of you who are employed and you have an employer, you ought to have your Board of Inland Revenue file number already. For those of you who are not employed and got into this business and started this business and never worked a day in your life, then you need to go and make an application for a Board of Inland Revenue, what we call a BIR file number. And in front of you is the relevant form. It's a simple form to fill out. It's a form where you would simply apply, put in basic information, name, address, what's the nature of your business, whatever, have you sign it. Take that along with your ID and some proof of address to the BIR office nearest you, and they will provide you the BIR number. Now, you ought to have a BIR number as a sole trader, but that's a number in your individual name. If you are into a partnership, you need to go and have your number in your individual name, but the partnership also has to have a Board of Inland Revenue file number. I want to repeat that. If I'm a sole trader, the number for the sole trader in terms of BIR number is my personal number. It's the same number that if I'm employed with the government or with some other private sector organization, it's the same number I use it. If I'm into a partnership, my personal number is my personal number, and the partnership must have an independent partnership number, and you have to apply for that separately. All right? For many of you who are in business, you do not have yet in place your bank account. I will strongly advise, if you tell yourself that you're in business and you're registered, get your bank account in place for me, please. Because here's what. For me to assess your business, I need to see the financials. For you to do the financials properly, I want to know that you have a bank account. I want to get some bankers confirmation. I want to know who your bankers are. If I'm applying for some registration somewhere else, who are your bankers? And therefore, in front of you now, and let me give you some more light to that. That's too much. Right. Documents required for opening a bank account. If you're a company, then of course I want the articles of incorporation, the certificate of incorporation. Whether it's continued, I want the notice of secretary, notice of address, notice of directors, and of course the most recent annual return and bylaws. That's if you are in a place where you are what you call a limited liability. If you are a sole trader, the bank wants your business registration certificate. The bank wants your utility bill, proof of address, and 2 forms of ID. In addition, they will want from you a cash flow statement, and some of the banks require it for 3 years. You only need a cash flow statement if you are in the bank, if you're now starting your business, you have not got a financial year done yet, you want a projection for 3 years. If you have been running the business for a number of years, you registered 2 years ago, and you're sorting out your business, and you go to the bank now, they'll want to see your financial statements for the last 2 years. You'll want to see your financial statements for the last 2 years. Remember, as a sole trader, your year end is December 31st. So they want to see your financial statement. If you are registered today or last 2 months ago, they will want a projection for 3 years. If, on the other hand, you were registered about 4 or 5 years ago, they'll want to see your financial statements. And that is where it comes back to, where are your records? The question is, so where are records? Show me your records, and that's what they'll want to see at that point. But here are some other things that also the bank will want to look at. There's a statement of affairs, if you're limited liability, some letter of reference, some company profile. From a sole trader point of view, I would strongly advise that you do, let's say, a 1 page, perhaps 1 or 2 pages, but not more than that. 1 page back and front. Then, what's this business about? What do you do? What is your philosophy of your business? Some kind of simple business profile that tells them who you are and what you do is also important to have. All right? And of course, tax compliance certificates will be required. I want also to touch on something else. The bank will depend on which bank you go to. This is a statement for, let's say, Republic Bank. FCB has a similar kind of format. They ask you for something called a statement of your affairs. So what you're doing, tell us what you're doing, how you're doing it. And the form generally has your name, your business, your personal, your name, your business, your initial, your date of birth, of course, an address. If you're employed somewhere, what is the employer arrangements and the details. If you're in the bank, what banking arrangements you have and where do you have those banking arrangements. Of course, if you're married, what your spouse information is. And then they have something called your assets and your liabilities, which is your personal. This is your personal. This is not your business side of it. Your personal. What are your personal assets and what your personal liabilities are? What cash you have on hand? What's your bank balances? Who owes you? What stock you have on hand? This is on a personal level. If you are into your business, they'll want this of your business. What is the finance? This is how your financial statement will look to them with regard to your business. What investments you have, what vehicles you have, equipment, furniture you have. This too is also been sent to you. So you have that to look at. But they also want to know things of your investments, what property you own. This 2-page form is where the bank assesses you as an individual. They could also take this form and assess you based on your business. What they want to see in your business? Your assets and your liabilities. Basically, that's what they want to see. So my advice to you, if as yet you do not have a bank account for your sole trader business, it's important that you get one. Or to get one, I am asking that you have 2 forms of ID. You have a utility bill and a proof of address. You have, if you're renting from the location, then the landlord must give you some kind of letter of saying that you're authorized to live there. The question that you have a cash flow statement or financial statement to prove what your business is doing, and then you could go and register. The question put to me is, so if you registered a half year ago, but have no records to show, or the company was on hold a while after registering and started production a half year after, the advice would be, if the company was on hold, it was effectively not trading. If the company was on hold, it is effectively not trading. But here's what your challenge would be. Twofold. If your company was formed a year ago, let's say 2 years ago or 3 years ago, right? A year or 2, 3 years ago, the company was formed, it was not trading. Then you have to do two things. One is, if it's a limited liability company, you need to go to and make sure you have the annual returns up to date. If it's a limited liability company, that the annual returns need to be up to date. And then you need to go and register for income tax and file what we call nil returns, meaning that you take the form, put 000 income, you're not trading, and then they want from you, they'll want a letter saying that you were formed on so and so date, you are not trading, and you have no business income. Sign that letter. In the nil tax returns, you file it, they then give you the tax clearance. So your tax will be cleared. The annual return will clear you from the registrar's office as a limited liability company. If you are a sole trader, and you are employed elsewhere, you might have done your tax returns. You would want to make sure that you are tax cleared up to before you start a business, that you are tax cleared up to the start of a business. If you had a sole trader business registration and did nothing in the last 2 years, and you now went and start the business. All right. But at some point in time, you will do a letter indicate when you're filing your first tax return, they may ask you on the tax form, what's the name of your business? When was it registered? And depending on what that says, they will then request of you that letter supporting the fact, you confirming that you're not trading. That's where you have to be. So 2 or 3 years ago, but you're already registered, you'll have to provide evidence or some statement saying that you are not trading as a business. Are we clear with that? All right. So that you are in a place where you clean up what you had in the previous years, and from point forward, you are organized to go forward with regard to, you have a tax clearance, you have your annual returns if your company is registered as a limited liability. As a sole trader, you have your certificate of business registration, and if you want to get your bank arrangement sorted out, you either present financials or do a cash projection for 3 years. Later today, I'll talk to you a little bit about how to do a cash projection and get you sorted out in that area. What I have before you now is for those of you who are not yet registered as a business. We said to you all that all of you in this session today that are running your business, the businesses that you have, ought to be registered businesses. So some of you already registered, EPIO. But let me make a comment to those of you who are registered. If you are registered and any of the information upon your registration has changed, I moved my name and address, I changed my name, I changed my address, any change to your business information ought to be filed with the Registrar of Companies. Or any information that changes in your business registration, your address change, the purpose of your business has changed, you need to register that change with the Registrar of Companies. For those of you who do not have a business registration, the process of registration is quite cheap if you do it on your own. At minimum, if somebody does this for you, it will cost you between $500 to $800 as a sole trader. If you do it on your own, the component of a filing fee, where you have to pay the fee will be somewhere between $265 in total to get the entire process almost completed. It requires the name of you, the person who is the applicant. It requires an address, a telephone number for contact, and the proposed business name of the firm, whatever you choose. The nature of the business, what is the business supposed to do? With regard to this business registration, the nature of the business, try to make that statement as general as possible, so that you want to say as many things so that you can do more things under your umbrella that you may have there for the business. But you ought not to be doing, let's say a driving taxi and I'm a designer. It can't be those poles apart. It has to be consistent with the work that, what's your core business, so to speak. What type of business registration? Is it an individual or partnership? Are you applying in item 7? What type of request is being made? Is it a name approval, a change of name, an extension, a replacement, or any others that we want to deal with or specify? 8 is where we're saying if it is a change of name, state the present name of the business and the registration number. So if it is that I have a business name that I want to change that name or change it from sole trader to limited liability, here's where we'll indicate what the current registration is of the business is. You sign that, you send it in, and this is an application for a business name as a sole trader. Once you do this, it will take you to minimum 3 days, maximum probably a week and a half, depending on how busy they are, and they're quite busy right now. And after that, you will submit what is called the application form number 1. It's the registration of business names under the Act. It's an application for registration by an individual. This is an individual. A partnership form is different. The business name, what is the approved business name? So coming out of the application for the business name, you got a statement saying what has been approved, the approved business name given to you, the name that you apply, and then you come to the general nature of the business. What is this? It's the same thing as above, but the principal place of business. So therefore, what is the business address? Where are you located? At present, given name or surname of the individual. So that's you now. Who are you applying for this business name? And do you have any former names or surnames that you had before? Did you change what you did get married and what name you had before that? All of that has to be disclosed here. Are you a Trinidadian? Nationality? Well, if not, what was the origin of your nationality? Were you something else before you became Trinidadian? Whatever else. What's your usual residential address? Where do you live? Other business occupation? No. The question here is, do you do other things or are you into other businesses? Then that has to be declared here. Normally the answer here is none or not applicable. The date you commence the business, and therefore it's the date that you're going to start the business. And any other business name or names that you're operating under, that might be want to be told to them too. So normally that answer is no, because you ought not to be doing that. And then of course you sign. With this submission and the approval from the Board of Inland Revenue, you pay the $220 at this point, and within a matter of 3 to 4 days after, you have a business registration certificate. I am pleading with those of you who are not yet registered. The forms will send you in the email. It's a simple process, and you can be guided by first filling out the business name registration. Having done that, and they're very simple questions to be answered. If you are not familiar with this, fill out what you know, and when you get to the counter at the registrar's office, they will guide you as to what you need to do. And then you have, of course, the long form, which you also have to print out. Fill this out once you have the name approval, and after a couple of days, you will have the approval with regard to the business that you're registered. I trust and I hope that those of you who are not registered feel comfortable now to go and get registered. But hold up. For those of you who say to us, once I'm registered, I'm kind of on the radar. Yes, you're on the radar. And if you're not on the radar, then many things that you would like to do, you're unable to do. All right? At some point in time, you are engaged now with Creative TT. At some point in time, you engage with a government agency. Somewhere in your journey with that government agency, the question will be asked of you. So it's important that you take the time now to go and get yourself registered, please. Thank you very much on that one. Okay, so let's take a step up now. And there are some of you who will have need for this, and there are those of you who will not have need for this. Whichever way it is, it's important that all of you as business people be fully aware as to what do you do if you have employed persons. What records do we now need to keep for persons who you are employing? What records do you now keep for persons who you are employing? It is crucial that if you have employees, you have them whatever time in your business, that you appreciate and you understand what you now need to do. Employee records. You want to maintain a separate file for each employee that contains the contract of employment, that contains the TD4, TD1 forms that they may submit to you, and any other correspondence that they may submit to you, or any correspondence exchange between you and the employee should be kept on that file. Issues with regard to payslips, you must issue to persons who you are employing. You must give them a payslip showing the relevant deductions from their compensation. You must maintain detailed payroll records, and we will discuss them now as we go forward and show you how to keep payroll records. Prepare an annual summary of wages and file the necessary forms with the Board of Inland Revenue. If you have employees in your business or you're planning to have employees in your business, it is important that you appreciate what records that need to be kept. So let's look at the wages records for a minute. If you have the employee file, the employment contract. Before I get into payroll records, let me also say to you, if you're employing somebody, please, don't mind how small the business is. Don't mind how you think small it is. If you're employing them on an ongoing basis, it is important that you engage with them on a contract arrangement where you have a document specifying the terms and conditions of your engagement. It's important that you do that. With regard to wages and salaries, book and register, you should keep a record of the salaries and wages paid to an employee. You must also give a receipt for such payments of wages and salaries as recorded. That payslip is evidence of what you have given to the employee. It's like the receipt, so to speak. You must also record the PAYE deducted, the health surcharge deducted, and the national insurance records must be kept. In both cases, the Board of Inland Revenue and the National Insurance, you have what we call compliance officers that go out to confirm that employers do the right things. And therefore, these records, when they come to you, the National Insurance will ask for the National Insurance records, and of course, the PAYE people ask for the payroll records to see that the proper deductions are being taken out. At the beginning of any year, the employee should give you what is called a TD1 form to ensure that the proper taxes are taken out for the employee's compensation. What is a payslip? You can bill it in Excel, or you can have some payroll record system depending on how much people you employ. I will employ upon you. You can go online and get payroll record systems. Most of them you have to pay for. You don't get these free. So that would be applicable to the Trinidad and Tobago system of wages and salaries. All right, it has to be specific to Trinidad and Tobago. In front of you, therefore, is the payroll record of a company that exists. The employee's name and some employee number. In this case, we also put the department that the employee is working in. This gross pay, this PAYE, national insurance, health surcharge, deduction, net pay, any taxable benefit. This is the simple payroll record that we want for all the employees that you will employ. If some of you bring on people for a short period of time, this is your payroll record format. If some of you employ people on a permanent basis, this is a format for your payroll records. You want to know what is your gross pay, what is your taxes that you deducted, what is the national insurance that you're taking out for them on an individual basis, what is the health surcharge, what is the deduction for that they may have that you may be taking out for them, and then what is the actual amount that you give them in their hand or by check or into their bank account. You need to keep a record that reflects this. That's your payroll record. From this, we will know how much national insurance you have to pay as an employee. The employer pays twice the amount of the employee, and therefore twice the amount here as the national insurance is what you'll pay as an employee. Added to the total amount of the employee, the total contributions that you're paying across the national insurance. And let's look at the pay slip. You should, a pay slip could be designed in any way. This is just one of the many designs that you can use. But you should have basic information on the pay slip that the employee understands what you're doing. You can build this in Excel, you can build it in Word, it's up to you. But it's a simple thing that simply says whatever employee's number or badge number that they have, the employee's name, what is the pay date that we're making this payment, what year in question, and the period, what department this person works in, and are we paying for what period of days are we paying for, 31 days. We have their straight time. We want to know the deductions that have been taken out in terms of national insurance, health surcharge, and whatever pension plan or whatever have you. Total deductions, total gross pay, what's the net pay, and you will want to indicate to them what has been done so far year to date. It's very important that you maintain the year to date, because at the end of the year, you will have to tell the tax office what is the total compensation, and you have to submit what is called a TD4 slip. The TD4 slip, therefore, takes this information, year to date information, and put onto that TD4 slip is what is going to be submitted to the Board of Inland Revenue. I want to take just a few minutes. Again, I will duck out of this and get to bring this to the table. Everything is available to you online. And therefore, you can go, if you have an issue with national insurance and you want to understand what national insurance I'm taking up for these employees, go to the national insurance website or go onto URL, national insurance rates, and the rates are there for you to deal with. The calculation of rates for pay, very straightforward, very simple. It is either somebody's a weekly paid employee or a monthly paid employee. A monthly paid employee gets paid at the end of the month, and a weekly paid employee gets paid by the week. So if I'm a monthly paid employee and I'm getting $4,000 a month, I just go down to the bracket where that $4,000 occurs, which is bracket number 5, which is the earning class 5. Within here is the $4,000 salary per month. And if you're in that zone, the average pay that you're getting is $845 a week per average. Each week, you need to contribute $37.20 as an employee. Each week, for the number of Mondays in the month, you will contribute that amount of money. So if there are 4 weeks in the month, it is $37.20 by 4. If it is 5 Mondays in the month, it is $37.20 by 5 as an employee, and that's the deduction that will come against your compensation. The employer has to pay $74.40 per week for the number of Mondays. So as it pays it multiplied by 4 or multiplied by 5, depending on the number of Mondays in the month. That is what the employer pays separately. Combined, what national insurance expects to see is that for this employee, the contribution should be $111.60 per month. If the persons that you are working for you are over the age of 60, then we're going to a different zone, and they're probably into pension already with the National Insurance Board. Then they may want to be contributing at what we call the Z table, and that's where that Z table comes in for persons who have gone past the statutory age for contributions. That is where we are dealing with. The question put to me is this whole thing about fortnight. What is a fortnight? A fortnight is 2 weeks. 2 weeks have 2 Mondays, and therefore, whatever you're paying on a weekly basis. So in case of weekly paid employees, if you go to the column number 2, which is up here, which is weekly paid employees, then in that column, you come down to find what is the weekly pay of that employee. So if the employee is getting $900 per week, if you go down to class 5, then this class is where he's getting $900. In this class, he's getting $900. Then his weekly contribution is $37.20. If I'm paying him on a fortnightly basis, one assumes that the pay that he has this week is $900, but know something, for whatever next week you're paying him a bit more money, and therefore the contributions may change. But if it's fortnight and it's a fixed fortnight payment at $900 a week or $900 a fortnight, this is a weekly thing, and therefore you look at it on a weekly basis. This is not, for a fortnight is 2 weeks, and therefore you look at it from that basis between the two, and it's $37.20 per Monday based on that $900 per week calculation. Bearing in mind that national insurance payments over to the National Insurance Board must be made no later than the 15th of the month. And therefore, we are in the month of April. So by April 15, I should have already paid for the month of March. When we get to May 15, I should also already be paying for the month of April. Let me also remind some of you people that you're in business. And I want to tie this back to a number of things. When you're costing your product, be mindful that there's an employer's contribution that you need to take account of in costing your product. I also want to say to you, if you're employing people, now hear what some people say to me. But they're only part-time. They're only working a couple of days a week. The law says that if you employ these people, that you need to be taking these deductions. But this person already working for somebody and they're taking out national insurance across the road. That is not your issue. Your issue is that they are working for you. And you have a responsibility as an employer to take out the requisite money for the money that you are paying. What it does for them is that it probably throw them into a different category, a different bracket. That's for another place. You as the responsible employer ought to be taking out the right thing. Now, again, I want to take you down a little road to say to you, the right thing is the right thing and the wrong thing is the wrong thing. Do the right thing. Now, if it is that you're taking on somebody that comes and works with you on a regular basis off and on, and you don't want to deal with the national insurance issue, then that person comes and works for you must also be a sole trader just like you. Go and get them registered. Let them give you an invoice at the end of the month and you pay them. You have an invoice for work done from somebody who is a registered business. And that is how you get rid of the national insurance requirement for somebody who they have their own business on their own right to. They will take care of their own expenditure. They will take care of their own commitments as far as their business is concerned. But you can't be bringing on somebody 2-3 weeks a month and not doing the requisite deductions for them. That is crucially important. All right, let's get this back on track. We will stop just about 12:30 and take a break and then come back, but we're nearly finished on this side. So that's your payslip. And of course, we see in the payslip, you have the relevant deductions and stuff. For the other book that we have is the cash book. And that cash book is a record of the cash expenses and cash receipts that you're making. Some of you just want to deal in cash. It's not the way to go. I wouldn't advise it. But if you are already dealing in cash, and you're dealing partly in cash and partly in checks, then you must maintain a cash book showing the cash that you receive and the cash that you spend. You can buy a cash book in any stationery shop. With regard to the petty cash vouchers, remember I said to you that petty cash vouchers must be put against the bills, because for as far as the taxman is concerned, the petty cash or check payment vouchers are your internal documents. Therefore, you will need to go to the stationery shop, or you could create your own and have these attached to the bills that you have where you paid cash, and you have the ones called check payment vouchers that you put against where you pay by check. Staple them together, put them in month order, put them into the IXL binder, put some nice order and structure into the work that you're doing. So those are all the basic books that we have. Those are all the basic books that you need to deal with. But here's where what we call the rubber now meets the road, because after you put all those books together and have those financial records, we're in a place where, as accountants and people of understanding of finance and knowing how your business needs to look, we can create what's called the financial statements. The financial record is intended to highlight the following information of a business. At the date of presentation or preparation, this is what you will see. Now, the banker and yourself as an individual, the banker understands what the financial statements look like. For those of you who have any fear of numbers and those things, I'm asking you clearly, get over it. Here's how you get over it. Understand what you are seeing, and over time you will learn how to interpret what you're seeing. On the right of your statement, on the right of the slide, is what we call the statement of financial position, or what we used to call the balance sheet. It shows the assets of the business that are under the control of the entity. It also shows the amount that is owned by the entity, what we own, what is ours, and the amount of capital of funds that have been invested in the business by the beneficial owners of the entity. So the balance sheet and statement position is generally divided into 4 parts. Part 1 is what you see on top, which is the current assets and current liability, my total assets. Part 2 is the current liabilities, non-current liabilities, total liabilities. Part 3 is the capital or drawings, which is really kind of what we call the equity in the limited liability company. So it's total capital and liabilities is the other part. That, in a simple form, is the balance sheet. In simple language, assets are what I own, liabilities is people that I owe, and the capital and drawings is what belongs to me in the business. What I've put in or what I've taken out in the business. It's as simple as that. Don't be fearful of opening that page or looking at the financial statements. Look in the newspaper. You see in the newspaper, you see financial statements. Don't be discouraged. If you look at it, it's all designed and almost in the same way. Assets one way, liabilities the other, capital in the next. 3 parts. 3 simple parts. So that's the statement of financial position, balance sheet. The next other part is the income statement. So after we do all the books and records and fancy everything nice, we summarize them now in these financial statements. The next thing that we summarize in what we call statement of comprehensive income. The income of the business, otherwise we refer to it as the profit and loss accounts, reflects the financial performance of the business. You, as a business person, need to know how your business is performing. You can't be going on making losses all the days of your life. That's not what you're from. That's not what you're in business. You're in business to make money. Don't be apologetic about that. We are capitalists to the core. So therefore, what we will do is to look and see how much we're making and whether we could make more. It compares the amount of revenue generated against the expenditure. And therefore, that is why now we take the sales book and say, okay, this is total income. We take the purchases, they book. We look and see total. What's the amount of the gross purchases that we made, subject to the adjustment of inventory, stock items, to get what we call our gross profit. Below the gross profit is all our expenses. So all the category of expenses that we have, insurance, professional fees, motor vehicles, all those category of expenses I went through with you come up here now by category in summary to get total expenses. And gross profit income minus cost of sales is gross profit. Gross profit minus expenses leads to my profit position. Yes? If nothing else, I kind of don't understand balance sheet. I don't understand anything else. You, as a business person on a monthly basis, need to have what I call a back of the envelope of rudimentary understanding of what is my income, what is my expenditure, to know what my profit is. Take some advice. If as a business person, you are able to achieve that on a monthly basis, by the 10th or the 15th of the following month, you could do something, sketch out for me what your income and expenditure is on an ongoing basis and refine it as you go along. You get better and better at doing it. You'll be on top of what your business is doing. I hope I'm preaching to those who understand and appreciate the importance of doing this. When you look at statements of cash flow, which is the other ones, these are more complex and complicated for people who understand the financial work better. So that the third statement, I said to you, there are 4 statements that we look at. We look at statement of equity, we look at cash flow, we look at balance sheets and balance sheet statements, and we look at income statements. Statement of cash flow. I wouldn't get too heavy into this. I wouldn't worry about it when I'm seeing it because it mightn't concern you as yet. But for those who want to go into it, it helps us to appreciate where the flow of money is going and coming. If you look at the bottom of the statement, it is represented by cash in the bank, investments, overdraft. That is your total cash balance. Above, you will see cash balance for the period, which is the same as the net balance in the bank. What happens above that is how the money was utilized by the business. How much came from profit? The accountants have something called non-cash adjustments. How much adjustments we made for non-cash, and then how much debtors we collect, how much creditors we pay, what assets we bought, what we invested in. We want to know those things to see how our cash movements took place. That's what we want to look at. All right. I want to also indicate to you taxation. Taxation is very, very simple. Simple from the point of view, people. Render unto Caesar what is his, and the rest is yours. Tax people, also, it is better to avoid the tax than to evade the tax. If you avoid the tax by doing what is required in law, no problem. You see, if you're going to evade the tax, then walk, as I say, go straight to jail. Because here what? If you evade taxes, the taxman is coming to you at some point in time to collect his interest and his penalties for non-compliance with his tax laws. Your taxes are assessed on your profits. And therefore, for those of you who are in business, you can adjust. You have your sales, you have your expenses, and depending on all the expenses you put in, for many of you, when I went through the expenditure that you're allowed to take, I'm sure many of you didn't appreciate. From a business point of view, the house that you're renting in, that's a business expense in part. The telephone that you're using is a business expense in part, depending on how it is. The cell phone that you're using, if it's in the business name, is a full expense on the business. The electricity bill, so that there's some expenses that you're making now that you should recognize are legitimate business expenses and take them into account. If sufficient records are not kept by your business, then the Board of Inland Revenue has the authority to assume what your level of profit is and charge you accordingly. So let me explain that. You decided, here what, I ain't keeping records, and they catch up with you. The Board of Inland Revenue has a database of all the designers in the country that they know, all the dressmakers, all the doubles vendors. Well, for those of you who are registered doubles vendors, yes, they have an idea of what these people make. And therefore, they will say to you, you are supposed to make $30,000 in taxes for us, and therefore we will charge you $30,000 tax. Until, if you can't prove it, you have to pay that. So you understand what the problem is for you? If it is that your profitability is not significant, then what the Board of Inland Revenue can impose on you could be greater than what you're normally making, and you have to pay it. The only way you can get around it is that you have to prove to them what your expenditure and your profitability is by the records that you are keeping. Records, therefore, are to be kept for 7 years, i.e., the current 6-year period prior to the current year and the current year in question. That's how we get the 7. So you have to keep records for 6 years plus the current year. So you must keep your records properly filed, properly stored, so that if they come to you at any point in time, they request that you go back for 6 years. For those of you who registered the business 3 years ago and 4 years ago and then trying to show I ain't doing nothing, I do a little thing, and they find you out, they're going back for the 3 years that you started the business. So it's important that you have the records to show. Some records must be maintained permanently. Financial statements, company registration documents, and employee records must be maintained at all times. It must be kept. You can't throw them away. You can't throw them, lose them. You must have them and keep them. And as we're saying to you, you must be able to prove yourself, your records for 6 years. Don't look like this the guy in the slide. Don't have paper all over the place. Don't have paper all over the place. Get the relevant IXL file in the stationery shop, buy the vouchers, the cash voucher, buy the check payment voucher, and sit down at night, sit down whatever evening, take some time, and let that be the time that you always sit down and do your work. There's a school of thought, and for those of you who like to read, look at the book by somebody called, E-Myth, E-M-Y-T-H, E-Myth. That book, or books by that author, speaks to how you should look at your business. Spend time working on it or working on your business, but not working in your business. I want to repeat that. Spend time working on your business, doing the things that make your business more efficient and effective. But don't go downstairs and you're doing everything in the business. So you're running after the clothes, you're going to shop thing, and you're running after everything to get nothing done. Spend time working on your systems. Spend time putting in place the right processes, so that the processes and the efficiency by how you do things will improve your business. I've been asked a question. What should a person do if, as a sole trader, have been in existence and trading for several years and have been paying health surcharge and filing income tax documents to BIR, however, have not been paying the business and green fund levy because they do not know or had this? That's interesting. The Board of Internal Revenue, the question the person is asking, if you understand it clearly, is that they've been in business for a long while, but they're not paying attention to this thing called health surcharge, and they didn't pay that, and they're not paying green fund levy and business levy. If you're a sole trader, the Board of Internal Revenue could ask you to prove your business for the last 6 years, meaning that if you're in business for more than 10 years, the best that they can ask you for is to pay and settle outstanding liabilities for 6 years, plus the 7th year, which is the year in question. So the year in question and the year going back, right? And let me just say this. Now, folks, let's be practical here, right? As night follows day, with all what's going on in this country today, an amnesty is almost necessary now to free up people, because here what? Some of us can't make the expenses. If I were in anybody's position like what Ms. Noel is saying, I would then start today, this year, and sort out this year. Start filing. And the day you see they come back on a amnesty, then you go back and sort out those things. In the meantime, you're hoping that they don't come to you, because every year that passes is less time. So in other words, they can come to you for 6 years. And the more so if you start today and you start to do and pay what you're supposed to pay and do what you're supposed to do, every year going forward that is correct means that there's 1 year behind you that you're losing. So, but if you have I don't advocate that you go and pay up all 6 years and you calculate for 6 years if you have all the financials for those years. I am saying what you do, you start currently, perhaps last year, sort out last year, do this year, and then you say to yourself, okay, as I go forward, I know what I need to know and I do what I need to do, and let those years, the other years, fall away, because they mightn't get to you after 6 years. If they get to you in a shorter period of time, it might be less years for them to look at. But you try to fix the current year and the previous year, 19 and this one, and we can sort out the rest afterwards, unless you have a need for something else. If it is that let's say you go to the bank and the bank says to you, provide me with a tax clearance certificate, well, you know you can't present it. right? Because if you want to present a tax clearance certificate to the bank and you go to the tax office to get it, the tax office will say to you, here what? Give me 6 years outstanding, pay health surcharge, pay this, pay that. So it depends on, so that you must understand that in this period of time, your ability to access some degree of funding or financing from certain sources might be limited. All right, thank you very much. Receipts and payments. A systematic approach to record keeping is important. Store all receipts and payments, invoices and suppliers provided in a file. Store petty cash and check payment vouchers in some kind of folder. And maintain copies of all invoices and documents related to fixed assets. That's what we need to do. Receipts and payments, keep all those records. I hope that you now know and understand what is that we're dealing with. The book that I recommend, the question being asked here, has to do with the fact that I said to you there's a book called EMYTH, E-M-Y-T-H. E-M-Y-T-H is the name of the book. The guy who writes is in that zone where he speaks of different what you call it, different professions. So in other words, myself as an accountant, he has an EMYTH for accountants. He has an EMYTH for gardeners. But he has books called EMYTH Revisited and EMYTH. Those two, EMYTH and EMYTH Revisited, that speaks to how business people must conduct their business. His principle is very simple. Work on your business, do not work in your business. When you work in your business, you are inundated with things to do, and you're not seeing the wood from the trees. You're not looking at the helicopter view and understanding it. Thank you much. Yes, EMYTH Revisited. And they send you the link, so you got it. So the point I'm saying to you guys is that you must begin to look at putting in place your systems of your business, and the business will run efficiently. Now, let me explain something. You will find yourself in a place whereby you start doing something and you're uncomfortable. Didn't we learn to ride a bike? Trial and error. We find it and we find it and we find it. You get accustomed to it. It's a ritual and a habit. All right? I have an exercise here that I want us to do, but I don't want us to do. The answer is already provided for you. So what I would ask you to do is to look at the exercise, ask some of the questions, and I've also provided the solutions to the back of it, right? But here's the three things I want to deal with quickly. Source steps in accounting. Source documentation, you must have. Keep your paperwork. Every bill is important. Like you, I run a small business. I go to the gas station, I get a bill. I go and eat out, I want a bill. Wherever it is, I want a bill. And sometimes, depending if I buy a suit, I want the bill because for the business I'm in, I need to dress well, and therefore the company has to pay for me to look good. Journal entries to be done, that's an accounting transaction. Postal ledgers, you set up your ledger books and you deal with it, or you have an accounting system. All of this is a cycle of what accounting is. You don't have to get into this. You just simply have to understand. Put some structure and put some books in place and deal with it. Here's the simple guides. Here's the simple steps. Guys, find some time on a weekend, at night, when everything is done and you're quiet, you try and put to bed, you sit down and you put your paperwork in order, you staple your bills onto your vouchers and you put them in a file. Bam. It's important to do. Do the important things. Get the important things done. Control. You want to put the controls in such a way that you manage your business affairs from the point of view, know what money you put into the bank, reconcile your bank account to make sure the bank didn't deliver their money, sort that out. Make sure your customer records are important. You have a customer database, know who your customers are, get to know them in an intimate way. Keep your records for 6 years and the year in question. As best as you can, automate your processes. Some of you are designers, some of you cut and sew, automate those processes, but also automate the accounting for those processes so that you make it easier for you to do the work and faster for you to do the work. And as you do what you do, reward yourself for the effort that you put in and the results that you're seeing. Because if you make this thing a ritual in your life, if you make it a habit in your life, it will be done to your benefit. I want to show you all something too that I think is important because of the nature of the businesses that you all are in. And Yes, here it is. This has also been sent to you because I'm assuming here that many of you are in the business. Come on. Right? Just a minute. Let me get that to the center a little bit. Insert. Right. Okay. What is this, right? What is this really? This is my business, whatever my business is. It is a cost sheet. So I have somebody coming to me that want to design some outfit. I want to have a database on my customers so I know the data that they have come to me. I have a description of what they want me to do. I have their size and range and measurements, whatever marker, whatever it is that they have, and whatever cloth I'm going to use. You can sketch on the right whatever design that they have or that they want. You can put it attached. You can put some swatches to the back to say this is the quality cloth or whatever it is. You know what you're going to sell it at. If it is that you're making a mass, you prototype, cost out your prototype. But your costing of your prototype has to do with the material and the trimmings that you will want to put on. What other services that you want to engage to get this thing done? What's the labor cost, cutting, sewing, total, and what's it cost? What margin you want to make, and what's your selling price? This is another part of record keeping that you all need to appreciate. There's the issue of costing and pricing. If you don't have the records, as we described, you wouldn't understand what you're doing to get your price right. For many of you, if you don't keep the records, you don't understand the pricing of your product. And sometimes, why not making money? Because you're not looking at the accounting for your records. This template, which has also been provided to you, is where you take, let's say you're making to order. You can measure, somebody will have their measurements attached, and then you break down the costs for doing it. If you're making it a mass and you want to do a lot of multiple products in terms of putting them out in volume, then sit down, work out what the material cost is by yard, by unit, by amount. Am I using lining or anything else? Right? And whatever interfaces that you're using. And getting down to that detail will help you to cost properly based on the records that you have. So if a price change and you get a new invoice, it comes to your accounting system, you pick it up, you can add it to your costing analysis to know that your costing and pricing is correct. Yeah. There's a question we got: after how long is a business? How long in business is a business and green fund levy due for a sole trader again? Business levy, once you just started your business, you have 3 years without having to pay that. 3 years. So after the 3 years, you must start paying your business levy in the 4th year. Green fund levy start as you start. Start immediately. So that what we did today, we looked at record keeping and how a business is supposed to maintain its records. We start off by the various books and the importance of keeping the records. The records, keeping the records is not just to say that you're keeping records for record's sake. It is to provide information for your decision making in your business. Am I profitable or not? Pay the right taxes, pay the right levies, do the right things, that you don't find yourself making the mistakes and all of a sudden you're paying too little, or you're overpaying these people. Pay them what is due and not more than that. For those of you who are sole traders and that's exclusively what you do, you're not getting national insurance, you're not in that zone for benefit. I am saying to you, it's advisable that you establish for yourself to make sure that you have more profitability to you, a pension plan, and to do a pension plan based on the banks. And therefore, why? Because I don't want you to be paying a fixed payment on a monthly basis. The banks can be more flexible, and you can say to them, I'll be paid when I can contribute when I need to contribute. And therefore, tips from the public, tax advantage from FCB, future cash from RBC Royal Bank. Those are the kinds of pension plans as business people, as you are, you need to put in place. The other thing that you need to put in place as a business person, as a sole trader like yourself, please go to whatever credit union that you need to join. Make sure they have a medical plan in that credit union and join a medical plan too. Here's what I'm saying to you. There are two basic risks that you have. You have health risk, you understand right now, and you have risk with regard to your future earnings. And therefore, that is why you want these two things to be dealt with. Yes, you don't have national insurance contribution, so go and have your own pension plan. You can contribute up to $50,000 maximum and pay no taxes in to that contribution. And then you have a medical plan so that if there are medical risks that you have those things covered. If your business is not registered at this point in time, please register your business, because here what? Nothing that you do going forward, you will find the question always asks, are you registered? Before I close for this part of the session and allow us to take a break for lunch, I just want to touch on 4 things. Your record keeping and cash management is important. Your record keeping and cash management is important. Knowing your business and what your business is about is important. The skill that you all have, some of us don't have it, I don't have it. That skill is your God-given gift. But he's also given you the other gift of understanding that says, know what you need to do and do it to the benefit of your business. In the light of what is happening today in Trinidad and in the world, I just want to leave you with 4 things of understanding that you need to appreciate as a business person. The way the global economy is today and the way we are in terms of Trinidad and Tobago today, the market is changing. Companies are going to find it difficult to do things. Your business is changing. You can say what you want. Every business in this country is going to change. And therefore, mindful of that change, you need to put your mindset in a place to appreciate what should I be doing so that when this is all done and finished, that I'm in a better place. Keep your records. Understand the income and expenditure of your business. Consumers are going to have what I call it, there's a shift in how consumers will relate to you in your business. There's something called what we call a discount mindset, whereby all of us will be looking to see what we can get at a cheaper price. Because here what? Things are going to be tough, yes, because coming out of, we already going in 2 months of what we call a recession. After 2 months of decline, there's a recession. After 4 months of decline, it's called a depression. So we get into that point where we're in that zone. And therefore, you need to look at, understand what income and expenditure you're making and manage your business affairs accordingly. The other thing about your business is, from a record keeping point of view, we learn this thing called, where we keep physical distance, social distancing. And because we have to do that, that will impact how we conduct business. And therefore, technology is what will drive businesses of the future. All right. And therefore, you need to be mindful in your business what technologies will be more appropriate for you and how you will be using that for the benefit of your business. From a fashion point of view, it is the survival of the fittest. Those businesses that are not organized and well will either fall by the wayside or survive. You as a business person would need to ensure that you have an understanding of the record keeping, know your income and expenditure, know what you can and cannot do, know what you want to leverage. Simply getting a benefit from the government right now requires that you're a registered business. Simply, if you have to say that you're self-employed, prove to me that you're self-employed. And therefore, you have to be mindful that those who are weak, are not organized, and don't have records in place, they will fall by the wayside and we suffer. To avoid your suffering, do the work and put your house in order. But more important too, as far as the fashion industry and systems will go, you need to be innovative with the things that you do and how you do it. So be mindful of that for me, please. In summary, therefore, given the world changes that we have, given what's happening, see where you can position your business, understanding your business record keeping, and those things will be very important. And you want to be in a place where you can find a way to be able to run the business effectively, use technology where you can, mindful that if you put your systems in place and know where you're standing, you can leverage your business so your business can grow even when other people are faltering. You can find your business growing. Please understand your costing and pricing with the template that I showed you to know exactly all the elements of the costing of your work that you're dealing with. There's a question I have before me with regard to, somebody else here take a break. With regard to pension plus from unit trust, the answer to that is I'm not comfortable with that unit trust as to how the long-term pension arrangements are going to be set up. I know there's the IRUA, and that is where they talk about long-term retirement. But the returns of that are not like a pension plan benefit. The IRA is what you put in, is what you're going to get out with some interest charges attached to it, which is a small investment. Yes, you can have that. What you can look at is having what we call a diversified portfolio of investments to secure your long-term future. If you have IRA doesn't provide you the pension in the long term. You have the money in there, the returns are there, and you will go out and take out what you need. With regard to the other plans I'm talking about, after you save a certain amount of money in that plan over a number of years, at the end of it, you get a pension on a monthly basis and you get a lump sum payment accordingly. So you have to look at those, you've got to investigate those things properly to know what you're looking for and how you want to set up your portfolio. You've got to be mindful as a sole trader, as a business person. You can't be working all the days of your life. So at some point in time, you want to be able to live off your returns, and therefore you have to set up for your long-term pension. You have to set up for your medical and make sure your medical issues are dealt with and covered. Those things need to be put in place in what type of business that you have. So that's the first half of it. This evening when we come back, we will deal with this whole issue of cash management and the importance of cash management. It's getting closer to 12:30 right now. I can take questions later on this afternoon when we deal with the work. So for now, I would be glad if we can come back at 1:15, and then we'll go till just about 2 in getting the understanding for cash management in place. We will start back our work, therefore, at 1:15 precisely. Please be minded. Thank you for your listening, and I see you again back at 1:15.